Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. Before we begin this week's episode, I wanted to let everyone know that it is Teacher Appreciation Week, May 8th through May 12th. And so, in preparation for that, I wanted to send a great, big, humongous hug of appreciation to someone who works with Teal on a daily basis. I'm not sure if she listens to the podcast. I hope she does so that she can hear this, because I wanted to send a personal thank you to Amy Carnevale, Teal's pretty much nonstop aide. Miss Carnevale does so much more than just help Teal. She teaches Teal. She supports Teal in her communication. She comforts her when she needs loving, and she listens with her heart. She is Teal's right-hand woman. She supports Teal in every way possible throughout her day. And that begins at pickup at 8:15 and goes all the way till 2:15. Amy deserves a medal, a huge fat raise, and my deepest appreciation. Teal adores you, Amy, and for a mother to know that her daughter is being taken care of in the way you take care of my Teal, well, that makes every day at school meaningful and bright and so much easier. So thank you, my dear. Thank you. Thank you. All right, on to today's show. I interviewed Suzanne Falter this week. In our chat, we talk about grief, mourning, and the importance of self-care. We discuss how each of us can connect with someone in spirit, the default mode, and why doing nothing is so important to healing and connection, and some ways to raise your vibe so you can find and keep those connections. I hope you enjoy, and let me know what you think. After losing her daughter, Teal, in 2012, Suzanne Falter found she badly needed healing. Her daughter provided that healing, as she shares in her latest book, a memoir called Free Spirited: How My Daughter Healed Me from the Afterlife. Suzanne is the host of the Self-Care for Extremely Busy Women podcast and is the author of multiple self-help titles, including The Extremely Busy Woman's Guide to Self-Care. Suzanne, that's the shortest bio, and you have so much more that you could have said in there. I've done my research. I'm like, holy goodness, that's the shortest bio for someone that you could have given me a page of bio. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm thrilled to have you here. Yes, you guys, her daughter's name is Teal. And the first time I realized all of this, I kind of freaked out, just so you're all aware. Teal passed away, and now my Teal is here. And I sent you an email a couple of weeks ago, basically taking bits from your book that describe my daughter now. And it's incredible. So tell me, I mean, I have everything from the radiance, her effervescence, her fizzy, she's fizzy. Your Teal is fizzy with effervescence. I mean, her beautiful teal colored eyes before they closed again. And that was in chapter 3. The light filled being whose deepest love was her love for others would soon be returned to dust. That was chapter 1. I forgot to warn you, I cry all the time on this podcast. People know it. But anywho, so tell me about your Teal.
Well, it's a pretty good story. Teal, my daughter Teal Barnes, was a really wonderful, free-spirited person. And she was a singer, and she went all over the world with her little backpack and her guitar, playing music for people. And she was a very, very wonderful blues singer. And she went to the Berklee College of Music and studied the blues and took off to see the world. And she decided along the way that she wanted to be a healer. And at the time, I was changing my life, leaving her dad, moving across the country, becoming a lesbian, becoming an independent person. She moved in with me and said, I want to be a healer. I'm done with music. So, okay, here comes Teal. Get ready, San Francisco. And she found her way to a whole lot of meditating and receiving many, 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 many guided messages, really, that she wrote in a particular notebook, which I really explored and kind of devoured after her death. The day before she died, well, she collapsed, she called me and said, I'm about to have a really big seizure. Now, she had epilepsy. It was a well-controlled case. She took her meds. She took very good care of herself. And I said, well, shall we go to the hospital? And she said, no, I think, no, they're just going to try to change my meds. And I like these meds, Mom, because they make me feel closer to God. So she felt her epilepsy was connecting her to spirit. So I said, okay. And then I asked her this weird question. And I said, what is it about this experience that's connected to your life purpose? And she said, oh, right. Well, I want to heal, women and girls with panic and anxiety and so forth and so on. And she really went with that idea. And we hung up shortly thereafter. The next night, I met her for dinner in a restaurant. She was acting a little weird. I was very self-involved. I was a workaholic. I had my focus on, exactly what I wanted to do in that moment. So I wasn't paying a ton of attention to what I now know were petit mal seizures or absence seizures, they call them, that Teal was having at dinner. She was very quiet. She was kind of spacey. I got her a ride home and I left. And 2 hours later, I get a call from the hospital that she's in critical condition, that she's had 2 cardiac arrests and they've revived her, but she's in a coma. And I never spoke to Teal again because she died 6 days later. We had to take her off life support because she had sustained brain damage after collapsing from a medically unexplainable circumstance. Maybe a seizure, maybe not. Very, very rare situation with epileptics. 1 in many thousands will collapse from a cardiac arrest. And that's probably what happened here. We don't really know, and we never will know. The coroner and the medical examiner in San Francisco kept her kept her brain tissue for 2 years, unable to really make a determination. And what I took from the whole experience was that if Teal was going to die, I'd better get my act together. I had come to San Francisco 2 years earlier. I'd landed in a terrible relationship. I had overworked and that business had burned out. The relationship had ended brief just before this. And I was kind of driving around the Bay, not knowing what I was supposed to do or where I was supposed to go. So I'm looking at Teal in her hospital bed thinking, okay, if she dies, I become a completely better person. And I'm going to do everything it takes to become the kind of person that Teal would be proud of. And that was my goal. And I spent the next 2 years not working. I took 2 years off. I was planning to take a month off, but it became 2 years. And I grieved. And I really focused on self-care. And I learned about self-care, which I didn't know about. And I just spent 2 years being very intimate with myself and what I needed. And then, I followed what she wrote in her journals, and I did a lot of introspection, and I got support in support groups, and I really learned about how to redo my life. And I connected with Teal in the afterlife. Didn't expect to, not even remotely. I just thought, okay, it's me driving my little car around and crying now. That's the big difference. I just cry all the time.
Yeah.
And so, what was really funny was that a couple of months after she died, I started to really feel this energy around me. But it had first shown up when she was still in a coma. I was in a hotel room with her dad and our son, her brother, and we were all sleeping. And all of a sudden I was woken up and there was this bright, as you said, fizzy, effervescent energy around me. And it was joyful and it was jubilant and it was excited. And I was like, Teal? I could not believe it. But I thought maybe I was losing my mind. And this is what happens when you've had a great shock and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the energy told me it was Teal, and that she was going to be with me always. And don't sweat it, Mom. I've got this, and I'm going to be fine. And like, just don't worry about it. We're all on a trajectory here. I said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to die? And she said, I haven't made my mind up. Don't rush me. And what's really funny about that is I used to rush her all the time as a kid. I was constantly like, come on, the school bus,
When I read that, Suzanne, when I read that part of the book, I actually have it highlighted here in my notes because don't rush me. Dude, I can totally hear Teal. So my Teal is verbal-ish. She actually communicates a lot with me telepathically. And
oh, I love it.
I am not kidding you. That kid, like that would come out of my daughter's mouth. She'd be like, Mom, enough. Cool it. If we're 5 minutes late, we're 5 minutes late.
Exactly.
And there are times when she will touch my leg and pull me in for a hug when we are behind schedule and hold me. And she's a healer. And so I sometimes feel that healing energy when she does it, but she is saying, as in her 6.5-year-old little body, Mama, cool it, chill. So the lessons that I was reading, and your book is really wonderful. It's wonderfully written. I have so many things highlighted. I wish we had 4 hours to talk. Seriously, because I'd be like, okay, let's get into these details. Because it's just wonderful. It's almost like what Teal is teaching you or taught you after her death. I feel like I'm getting those lessons from Teal now. Like, I have a book started called My 5-Year-Old is Smarter Than Me. Now she's 6.5, so I got to get writing. Right. But at the same time, like, my whole world completely took an absolute, like Teal said, a trajectory that just completely changed when I had this child that is nonverbal and just learned how to walk and all of that. But I believe that each one of us has this magical child that, most of our listeners have children with special needs. And so I encourage people to look at them differently. And you're getting a chance to look at your daughter completely differently now.
Well, it's true. And, so many people have said to me, this is such a tragedy. My God, people were saying to me in the beginning, you'll never get over it, which is just about the worst thing you can say to someone whose child died. Could I just say that, folks? Anybody who's listening who knows someone, don't say that. And I think it was involuntary. I think people were shocked. So it just came bursting out of their mouth because it is pretty shocking. Very shocking. But the truth of the matter is that you discover things you never would have expected. Did I expect that I would connect with my daughter in the afterlife? Hell no. I never expected she would die. I was told epilepsy was this benign thing and you take some drugs and it's no big deal. And her neurologist literally said, nothing bad can ever happen. Those words. And, what I know now is this condition, SUDEP, sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, was suppressed. That information was suppressed. Now it is shared with people who are epileptics. But for many years, physicians thought people couldn't handle it. I think if she'd known this was possible, she would have had terrible anxiety because my Teal was a very sensitive person. And she even went to a therapist to try to learn how to cope with how difficult life is. Just the whole concept of being human was very, very challenging to her.
It sounds like she's very open. I mean, she was very, very
super open
so
and
all
really
that energy,
sensitive and receiving all the time, right?
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, I feel like she served her life purpose by dying when she did, because she has become known by many, many people. The thousands and thousands of people who listen to me talk about her on the podcast and have read this book, and many more to come. And, this is the healing work as far as I'm concerned. And I will get it out there as I can, wherever I see an opportunity to do that. And that's probably the deal with all of these challenges we get as parents is it's all about learning something very specific that's between us and that person. And in her lifetime, I never would have expected that she would go down this path and I would go with her. I always thought she was kind of pretty ethereal, and well, that's just Teal being Teal,
Oh my gosh. So I was going to ask you, were you on any sort of a spiritual path
Oh
before
yeah,
this?
yeah. I don't mean to make it sound like I was just some gritty, money grubbing person, although I was pretty money grubby. I
Yeah.
was on a spiritual path for many, many years, and even had a period of my life where I was a trance channeler in my 20s that was really
Okay.
just for a year, and it kind of came and went and it was over. And then I was like, oh, that was interesting. Okay. I was open, I wasn't closed. But at the time, I was extremely focused on making a lot of money and building a career and, kind of the influencer track before we called them influencers. This was 2012.
Yeah.
And I guess what I learned immediately after her death was I could see how self-involved I'd become. Example, really not tuning in to how out of it she was at that last dinner we had. And
I
I
read.
had
Yeah.
to really put that information kind of on ice for a couple of years till I could really pull it out and look at it, because I felt so responsible for a while.
Yeah.
But then I talked to cardiologists and neurologists, and they all assured me that even if I had taken her to the hospital, unless she was in the middle of a full-on seizure, which she wasn't for about an hour and a half after. I mean, this meltdown of hers didn't happen. Well, it happened about an hour after we went to dinner. But, I offered the day before to take her to the hospital, and there was no point to that because everything was still okay.
Right.
And, I don't know. I mean, she said to me from the afterlife, this happened the way it was supposed to happen. You and
Mhm.
your inquiring mind, mom. I mean, just get over
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
It's not about you, you
Well,
know?
well, and I believe that our children choose the path that they're supposed to be on, just like I chose my path, just like I made a contract with my Teal, before she came in.
Yeah.
I signed up for this life with her.
Mhm.
And as hard as that is sometimes, because the life is not always easy. We say in the
Right.
beginning of the podcast, we celebrate the magic and the mess.
Mm.
This is not always easy. There are hard moments, and I have it in comparison to a lot of other parents with children with special needs. I have it pretty damn easy. And yet
Mhm.
my life is still hard.
Right.
And so I do believe that these children choose us. And I love it how she just comes to you and says, come on, move on. Let's do, we've got work to do. I mean,
Yeah,
she
that's
had
it.
very clearly said to you, I need you to grieve. Like, and I'm very impressed that you took the 2 years, Suzanne, because there are so many parents that listen that I know have lost a child or have a child with a severe rare disease where that child is going to eventually leave this earth. And I love it how, one, you took that time for the self-care to learn about yourself, to step into the messages that you needed to receive, and then said, okay, now I'm ready with my Teal to move on. How do you think parents listening can learn how to connect with their own Teal, their babies in spirit after they've passed?
So much of it has to do with getting yourself into a quiet place. And, I appreciate you acknowledging me for taking 2 years off, but believe me, Jen, I fought it tooth and tooth and nail.
Yes,
I
you did
really
write about that
tried
in
to
the book.
work,
You wrote
and
about it
work
a
wasn't
lot.
having me. At work, I launched a learning platform and a course, and I enrolled it, and everybody unenrolled because the learning platform kept getting hacked into, 6 times, et cetera, et cetera. So I just gave up.
Yeah.
And I convinced myself that I could live on very little money, and I did. And I felt very abundant doing this. That was the really interesting thing. So, the first thing I'd say about getting connected to someone in spirit is to simplify your life as dramatically as you can. Not to say go live in a monastery, but there is a reason those people are living in monasteries,
Yes.
which is, I didn't have a phone. I let go of my phone for a better part of 2 years. I lived in the country. I lived in a friend's guest room for free in her house. And I just had this very untethered life to begin with at the time of her death. I didn't have a house that I was responsible for. I didn't have a whole lot of responsibilities. I was already living as minimally as you could.
Yeah.
So there's some power in that because you don't have to worry about the material world too much. Now, some people listening are raising other children and they need to show up for them. And obviously, you need to do what you got to do. But if you can take some time every day to be quiet, be still, daydream, meditate, look out the window, do nothing, that's where you're going to find the opening eventually to connect. And it has to be done in a way that is invitational rather than insisting, hey, I'm here, show up, come on, I quieted down my life, like Suzanne said. It can't be like that. It's got to be an invitation. When you're ready to connect, I'm listening.
Yes.
And it has to be, you let go of it, but you just enjoy doing nothing for the sake of nothing. Because there is this setting in the brain called the default mode, which only occurs when we allow ourselves to do nothing. And the default mode is the place of creative problem solving. It's where inspirations come from. It's a place we don't visit much anymore because of the fire hose of information that constantly deluges us. And I'm as guilty as anybody else. But I do try to make time to meditate every day.
Yes.
And in that meditation, we are forced to sit and do nothing. And it's really powerful. And you may not hear from your spirited friend or relative for a long time, or a clue may drop in front of you at an unexpected moment, or my favorite, you may wake up with communication in your heart or in your head. And that is really the key way that I connected with Teal. But I don't think it would have happened if I continued to live my previous life, which did not satisfy me, was difficult, was challenging, kept me so overwrought and anxious and feeling abused, and I'm abusing myself with too much work. Like the whole thing just, it was not a pretty life. It was a mess.
Yeah. And you're very articulate about that in the book.
Thank you.
You give us the nitty gritty. I mean, I think it's a very vulnerable book that you put out there. And I know it took you a long time to write it, and we could get into all of that. But I think just the rawness of it is important for people to read.
Thank you for saying so.
Well, even if it may help you relate to someone else that is going through this journey, right? I mean, I, knock on wood, hopefully, won't ever have to experience that journey. But it really is a great opportunity for people to step into your shoes and feel it. You did a really amazing job of helping us feel it. I cried a lot while reading the book. And
I cried a lot when I was writing it. Okay. So that's fair.
Okay, good.
It took me a long time to write it because I kept not knowing what the ending was.
Yeah.
And I worked with an agent on many, many different versions of it. And she finally let it go and turned it back to me. And I just published it myself. And it's interesting because there's a steady beat of people who want this book. And I think a lot of it is word of mouth, that people just are moved by it and they pass it along to someone they know who needs it. And the book just travels outward that way. And that's my dream, is that the people who need it will get it.
And it is very inspirational. I mean, some of the things that you write are, I'm going to read a couple of things because it's just really fun. In chapter 18, for me, this was simply another example of the intense and forgiving grace of the universe, a universe that takes away just as breathtakingly as it provides again and again. Each time it does, we have the chance to rise up and be reborn, but that only happens if we allow it. This much I had learned from Teal's death. And you go on to say, here was the gift, quiet and true. For within every crisis, there is possibility. Within the darkest grief, there are hollows of love. And within the very texture of life, there is hope. And tell me about, okay, so there's just so much we can talk about. You sure you don't have another 4 hours? Okay, so what I really want to get across is that anybody can connect with their loved ones in spirit. Anyone can, in the right moment, when they're calm, when they're positively intentioned but without expectation.
Mhm.
Right? I think
Yeah.
that's what you said earlier, is you got to let go and let go of the need for it, and then reach out,
The vibe of the afterlife is extremely high, and we lower our vibe with anxiety. And for us to touch the other side, our vibe and that vibe have to be at least in a shooting range.
Yes. Yes.
And if we are like, come on, I'm doing it wrong. Something's wrong. Oh, come on. Am I the only person you won't talk to from the app?
Oh
That
my
kind of
God.
thing. No, we're down in low vibe land.
It's
We
really
gotta we gotta do what we can. The things that raise your vibe are self-care,
yes.
relaxing, resting, taking care of your body.
Getting out in nature.
Yes, nature, super important. Being in a space where your brain can really relax. That's one reason, spirit comes in as we're waking up. That little alpha state moment is in that high vibe capacity because we have not filled our head with media, social media, blah, 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 to-dos, shame, regrets, anxieties, depressions. What am I doing?
Yes.
About money,
Yeah.
about
All of the
taxes.
self-talk, all of that. And it's
Right.
nonstop, right? It's nonstop.
Exactly.
I
Mhm.
recently saw like we each have something like 80,000 thoughts a day. Like, what?
Oh, I know.
I
I know.
mean,
Yeah, and they haven't started yet, so good
yeah.
time to connect.
I also heard that if you can get up and meditate before 6 a.m.,
Mhm.
there's a huge amount of value in that,
Mhm.
because the rest of the world is usually still asleep.
Mm.
And that energy of the world also can pull you in. So that was
Mm.
a something that I've been trying to do. I do try to focus and meditate. Did you like that?
Mm.
There's my world right there for you. I try to sit down and meditate and then journal afterwards,
Mhm.
because I do get automatic writing messages, and
Mhm.
I will reach out to Teal's higher self. I
Yeah,
will,
there you go. That's
so
another lovely practice, just letting your pen flow.
yeah. And she recently said to me, I am the selenite. And I thought, selenite crystal is one of the highest vibration crystals that you can work with. And it's a healing
Interesting.
crystal.
Hmm.
And it amplifies everybody else. It makes everybody else better. And I believe that your teal is also the selenite. She is making everybody better
Yep.
around her. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much. There's about 1,000 other questions I'd actually really like to ask you. So when you have more time, you let me know when you'd like to do
Mhm.
another recording.
Thank
uh,
you so much for having me on, Jen. It's just been delightful to meet you and hear about your teal and your journey.
well, I think they're playing. I think your teal and my
Could
teal are
be.
actually playing.
Could be.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I do have one question for you that we usually
Sure.
end our podcast with. And it's
Mhm.
new because we're in season 2. I just passed through 1 year. Listeners are gonna be like, okay, enough, Jen. Stop talking about that. So then the question is, and this is going to be very interesting for you. What is one experience that you've had with a person with special needs that's changed your life?
Well, if we consider someone with epilepsy, special needs, I would say the contents of this book is the answer to that question.
And that's kind of why I was like,
As
oh, I'm going to ask anyway.
surfing the death of Teal and realizing how little I knew about what a special needs person she was. Our attitude was always encourage her to be out in the world and follow her bliss and just go for it. And, she had a seizure on a beach in Ghana when she was out there by herself at age 16, I mean, that's pretty hardcore. And she came home pretty rattled by that and needed some therapy and such, and I didn't even realize then what I realized later, which is sometimes a person with special needs actually needs to be a person with special needs and not have parents in denial who are like, you're fine, just go see the world.
Yes. Yeah.
She needed encouragement and she got a lot of joy from it in her lifetime. Anyway, much to be learned. I just want to say that for people looking for the book,
Thank you.
if you go to Amazon and you type in the search bar Free Spirited Falter, my last name, Falter, it does pop right up.
Wonderful. And what is your podcast? Where can they find you?
It's called Self-Care for Extremely Busy Women, and it's on all of the podcast platforms.
Wonderful. And you have Facebook presence.
Yep, there's a group, and you can find it. Same name, Self-Care for Extremely Busy Women.
Yeah, I'm a part of that group. I got accepted.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you have to fill out some questions.
Yeah,
you gotta be the right.
Not
person.
a big deal. I'm, so many false profiles apply that there's a weeding process, unfortunately. But real people get in.
That's amazing. I did get in. Woo woo.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. I truly appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found one or two meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.